You wanted the best, you got the best. I, the record spinner, will be hosting the Kiss Vinyl Extravaganza on Whatnot. So be sure to tune in to the Classic Catalog Show, where I will be auctioning off Kiss records that comprise of, you guessed it, the Classic Catalog, and you'll definitely don't want to miss out on the Solo and Collectible Releases show, where I'll be auctioning off solo releases as well as a bunch of unofficial pressings supplied by Brian's Kiss Vinyl. I'm also going to be giving away some autographed Kiss Vinyl supplied by Kiss Haven. I do suggest you sign up using my referral link, which is whatnot.com/invite/the record spinner, where you will receive $15 credit that you can put towards your first purchase. So be sure to go on whatnot.com, search up the record spinner, follow my account, bookmark the two shows. So I will see you guys then. On vinyl community and Kiss Army, welcome to another video with the record spinner. In today's video, I'm going to be doing something a little fun and speculative, and that is tackling the concept of a Kiss 50 compilation. 2023 marked the 50th anniversary of the hottest band in the world, and typically most record companies will capitalize on a given band's anniversary with a new compilation. Sure, the last thing we need is another Kiss compilation since there are so many, but it got me thinking if the head honchos at Universal were to capitalize on this milestone. So I put together my proposed track list as well as some artwork mock-ups that I felt would be suiting. Now let me emphasize that as of filming this video, this Kiss 50 compilation is purely speculative. This is not an official release just announced or to be released by Universal. This is merely an exercise of extreme fandom and passion. There's a lot to get through, so enough of the chit chat. Let's jump into what this video is all about. The idea came from the fact that back in 2014, we got the Kiss 40 compilation. I'll spare my thoughts on that particular comp for another time, but long story short, I feel that it didn't quite represent the band best in a way that celebrated 40 years together. However, the structure of 40 tracks spanning 40 years is the basis of Kiss 50. Obviously, 50 tracks for 50 years, and instead of 40 tracks spread across 2 CDs, these 50 tracks will be spread across 3 CDs, averaging an hour length per each disc. In regards to the track list, I wanted to take the best elements that were present on all Kiss compilations, both those that were part of Kiss's core catalog like Greatest Kiss and Double Platinum, and the ones Universal put out themselves like Gold or 20th Century Masters, and put it together to make something that covered as much ground as possible, had the obvious inclusions, along with some interesting alternatives and deep cuts to throw the diehards a bone. So let's break down the track list and I'll discuss my logic behind the choices and which album they appear on. Starting off with Disc 1, tracks 1 to 3, Strutter, Deuce, and Black Diamond, from the self-titled debut. The first two open up Kiss Alive in bold fashion, and these two are always typically found on most Kiss comps, and the latter is an obvious stage staple closing off the main set of most tours. Tracks 4 to 6, Got to Choose, Parasite, and Hotter Than Hell from Hotter Than Hell. Got to Choose is a song the band has a lot of love for since they typically played it in most pre-show soundcheck sets. Parasite was revived briefly for the End of the Road tour, but this is one of Kiss's most ass-kicking songs, and it's also my personal all-time favorite. Slightly biased, but I'm sure most fans will agree with its placement. The title track is another constant representative of most Kiss comps. Track 7, Come On and Love Me from Dress to Kill. It pains me to pick just one song from this album, but this particular track is sensational and is typically found on most other Kiss comps. Tracks 8 to 10, live versions of Cold Gin, Rock and Roll All Night, and Let Me Go Rock and Roll from Alive. Cold Gin from the debut is a constant stage staple, and typically when performed live, Paul delivers that classic when you're down in the dump stage rap that I felt was appropriate enough to include here. Obviously, the live version of Rock and Roll All Night is the version that took off as opposed to the studio arrangement found on Dress to Kill. The live version of Let Me Go Rock and Roll is beefed up with extended instrumental passages that make this arrangement more recognizable and memorable as opposed to the 2-minute version found on Hotter Than Hell. Tracks 11 to 13, Detroit Rock City, Flaming Youth, and Beth from Destroyer. It ain't a Kiss comp if Detroit Rock City isn't featured, opens up most shows, and is one of their signature songs. Flaming Youth veers into deep cut territory, similar to Parasite, performed sporadically by the band, but loved by fans. And Beth is an obvious no-brainer as it is Kiss's biggest hit single. Tracks 14 to 16, I Want You, Calling Dr. Love, and Hard Luck Woman from Rock and Roll Over. I Want You is an absolute groover of a song and one that shone well in the live set in the 70s. Calling Dr. Love is an obvious stage staple and single, and even though Hard Luck Woman didn't provoke the same success as Beth, it's still a solid radio-friendly track. Now moving on to Disc 2, tracks 1 to 4. Love Gun, Christine 16, Shock Me, and Plaster Caster from Love Gun. The title track is one of Kiss's signature songs. Christine 16 was the first single off the album and still holds up well in the Kiss pantheon despite not aging well with time lyrically. Shock Me is Ace's signature song, and Plaster Caster is another one for the diehards, and Kiss typically performed it in most pre-show sound checks. Tracks 5 and 6, live versions of Makin' Love and God of Thunder from Alive 2. The former, originally from Rock and Roll Over, kind of resides itself in deep cut territory, and it was a pleasant surprise when Kiss revived it for the final legs of the End of the Road tour, thus giving the song its prominence. And the latter, originally from Destroyer, is Gene's signature moment on stage where he spits blood and levitates. But this version on the comp I'm going to consider an edit without the drum solo. Not a dig towards Peter, but since there are no live solos featured on this comp, it would just kind of stand out like a sore thumb. Now, these next 4 tracks are from each member's respective 1978 solo albums. Track 7, Tonight You Belong to Me by Paul Stanley. Track 8, Radioactive by Gene Simmons. Track 9, Don't You Let Me Down by Peter Criss. And track 10, New York Groove by Ace Frehley. Paul's track embodies passion in both its subtle intro and powerful arrangement, typically the one track represented on most comps. Same can be said with Gene's Radioactive, this version not having the demonic intro, which was issued as a single. Peter's Don't You Let Me Down was the first of 2 singles from his album and is most commonly represented. Obviously, out of the 4, Ace's cover of New York Groove was the highest charting single and gave him a bit of leverage in the Kiss fold. Tracks 11 and 12. I Was Made for Lovin' You, and Sure Know Something from Dynasty. The former is Kiss's foray into disco, was a worldwide hit, and became a permanent concert staple despite Gene's distaste for the track. The latter wasn't too successful as a single, but is one of the group's most musically mature songs in regards to the arrangement. Track 13, Shandy from Unmasked. This song was a massive hit in Australia, and typically the song that gets the most attention in general from the album. Track 14, A World Without Heroes from Music from the Elder. Had to have at least one song from this polarizing album, As Much As I Love It, was released as a single and was the first Kiss music video shown on MTV. Track 15, Nowhere to Run from Killers. This is one of those cases of covering as much ground as possible, that including non-album songs from other comps. A brilliantly arranged and sometimes overlooked song from Kiss's catalog. Tracks 16 and 17, War Machine and I Love It Loud from Creatures of the Night. The former ultimately became a stage staple, and the latter is one of the band's signature songs. Finally, we move on to disc 3, and crazy how 10 years covered the first 2 discs, and this last one packs in 40 years worth. Track 1, Lick It Up from the album of the same name. A live staple and one of the songs that would be permanently reinstated when the makeup returned. Track 2, Heaven's on Fire from Animalize. This track is marginally responsible for the album's success, and like Lick It Up is another track reintroduced during the reunion era. Track 3, Tears Are Falling from Asylum. Another key track of the non-makeup period that was revived sporadically when the band put the makeup back on. Track 4, Crazy Crazy Nights from Crazy Nights, an absolutely anthemic song which was one of the band's biggest UK hits. Track 5, Let's Put the X in Sex from Smashes, Thrashes, and Hits, a non-album compilation track, and while not one of the band's greatest moments, its inclusion here instates that same initiative like Nowhere to Run, covering as much ground as possible. Track 6, Forever from Hot in the Shade. This was the single that basically revived the band at the turn of the 90s and was their biggest single since Beth from 1976. Track 7, God Gave Rock and Roll to You from Revenge. One of the band's greatest songs. It's the last recording that features Eric Carr, and while it was performed live on and off over the years, it was mostly their walk-off song at the end of shows and was featured when the band debuted The Avatars. Track 8, a live version of Unholy from Alive 3. Now, the studio version from Revenge was the album's leading single, and while the studio version would have sufficed, I wanted to give Alive 3 some love by including this equally great live version. Track 9, an acoustic rendition of Nothing to Lose from MTV Unplugged. The song itself, originally appearing on the debut, is much loved, but this version featuring Gene, Paul, Bruce, Eric Singer, along with Peter Renace, was truly a special moment in history where you had 6 Kiss members on stage together and sort of planted the seeds for what would become the reunion of the original lineup. Track 10, Jungle from Carnival of Souls. The time frame in which this album was recorded and forcefully released is poor since negotiations for the reunion were going on behind the scenes. This was one of 2 radio singles released from the album, and this is actually the shortened radio edit. As odd of an album as it is, it's still part of Kiss's catalog and had to be represented. Track 11, a live version of Shout It Out Loud from Greatest Kiss. Originally appearing on Destroyer, this live cut was used in the music video for the song shot at the reunion tour's launch at Tiger Stadium. The song itself is one of Kiss's signature songs, and in an attempt to provide a bit of interesting variety, I decided on this version that only appeared on the compilation. Track 12, Psycho Circus from the album of the same name. This is a bombastic song that was the album's leading single and would become a live staple. This is also the edited version without the intro of circus sound effects. Track 13, a live version of Do You Love Me from Kiss Symphony Alive 4. Another track from Destroyer. This song, I feel, has a great orchestral arrangement by the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra. Since the pairing of the orchestra and Kiss was notable and worked, I wanted to shine a light on this Alive installment. Tracks 14 and 15, Modern Day Delilah and Say Yeah from Sonic Boom. The former was the album's leading single, and the latter would represent the band's more recent work when it became a permanent staple during the End of the Road tour. Tracks 16 and 17, Hell or Hallelujah and Right Here, Right Now from Monster. The former is the album's leading single and song that got the most stage time performed live, and the latter is a unique inclusion since it was only featured as a bonus track on the iTunes version of the album. A lyric video with Paul miming to the chorus meant that the band gave it some love instead of treating it like an afterthought. It's a solid song and a fitting end to the compilation. So I've dissected my proposed track list. Let's dive into some potential artwork designs that I worked up myself. I took some of the graphics from the countdown to the final 50 shows as a starting point of inspiration and basically stripped it down to just feature the Kiss logo and the number 50 in gold and place them on a basic black background. The back cover features the track list with the makeup icons that also appear in the countdown logo, along with the usual record company logos, catalog numbers, and copyright mumbo jumbo. This compilation comes packaged in an 8-panel digipack that first opens up traditional gatefold style with one of Kiss's earliest press photos from 1973 and a recent photo of the current lineup from the End of the Road era. These panels open up further to reveal the 4 photos of the band over the years. One of the original lineup in 1977, the band with Eric Carr and Vinnie in 1982, a non-makeup photo from the late 80s with Eric Carr and Bruce Kulick, and a reunion-era photo from the late 90s. These 4 panels will also serve as wallets to house a booklet in each of the 3 CDs. One of my favorite aspects of the Kiss 40 compilation was the design of the booklet, which showed photo spreads of the band over the years with their discography on display, which is what you see here. I'd like to stick to this approach, but maybe elaborate the spreads more with additional photos. I also took the liberty of designing layouts for each of the discs' respective track lists and credits. Each of the discs will include era-appropriate photos blended with a black background with the band's logo, compilation title, disc number indicators, and the Rock and Roll Over saw blade graphic in gold. Compilations are never destined to be perfect, and sure, there are other songs I would have loved to have included, but the challenge does rise when it comes to choosing 50 tracks for 50 years. Despite some minor omissions, I think this track list and overall package could serve its purpose and is sizable for casual fans to dip their toes and diehards to appreciate the legacy of the hottest band in the world. And if anyone from Universal watches this video, you should enlist me as a project manager. Seriously. But the main question is, what would you have chosen for a Kiss 50 compilation? Please drop a comment down below. I'd love to know. And if you enjoyed this video, please go ahead, give it a like, and subscribe to the channel. See you guys in the next video. And most importantly, keep the records spinning.